The European Union imposes fresh round of sanctions on Russia's oil and banks after Slovakia's President Robert Fico lifted his veto. US President Donald Trump orders the release of all Jeffrey Epstein files as controversy mounts over the records on the sex trafficking probe.
An area almost the size of Luxembourg has been burnt by wildfires in Europe so far this year.
The United Nations has confirmed that Israel has repeatedly denied visas for at least 3 heads of UN agencies in Gaza.
The European Union has agreed to impose a new round of sanctions against Russia, targeting the country's energy and financial sectors. The sanctions, endorsed on Friday by ambassadors in Brussels, ban transactions with 22 Russian banks, the Russian Direct Investment Fund and its subsidiaries, and the direct and indirect use of the underwater Nord Stream pipelines. Those pipelines are currently closed off, but Moscow seeks to restart them at some point in the future. The EU also placed a price cap on Russian crude oil to make it remain 15% lower than the average market price. The latest sanctions came about from a political breakthrough after Slovakia relented and lifted its veto, which had until now prevented the approval of new sanctions against Moscow. They are also seen as part of efforts by the EU to tighten the screws on the Kremlin's war machine and force a temporary ceasefire in Ukraine. US President Donald Trump has directed the Justice Department to provide information about the disgraced sexual offender Jeffrey Epstein. In a social media post late Thursday, Trump urged Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. Bondi responded by saying the Justice Department was ready to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Epstein, a one-time Trump friend, died by suicide in 2019 while awaiting trial on federal charges of trafficking of underage girls. Trump's order to the Justice Department comes as controversy over his handling of records from the Epstein probe entered a new dimension on Thursday as his administration struggles to fulfill promises to release details on the sex trafficking case. It also comes amid a sexually provocative letter that the Wall Street Journal claims held Trump's name and was used on the 2003 record for Epstein's 50th birthday. Trump denied drafting the letter, calling it fake.
Syrian government forces are to deploy again into southern Syria despite pulling out under a ceasefire agreement just days prior. Government security forces agreed with some of the Druze factions that they would re-enter the area to impose stability and protect state institutions, according to 2 Syrian officials who spoke Friday. The conflict drew airstrikes against Syrian forces by neighbouring Israel in defence of the Druze minority, before most of the fighting was halted by a truce announced Wednesday. Under that agreement, Druze factions and clerics would be left to maintain internal security in the area.
The United Nations has confirmed that Israel has repeatedly denied visas for at least 3 heads of UN agencies in Gaza. Visas for the local leaders of the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, known as OCHA, the Human Rights Agency OHCHR, and the agency supporting Palestinians in Gaza, UNRWA, have not been renewed in recent months. Tom Fletcher, UN Head of Humanitarian Affairs, told the Security Council that the denial of visas is in response to their work on protection of civilians in Gaza. In response, Israel accused OCHA of abandoning its neutrality and impartiality in its statements and actions. Meanwhile, a funeral was held for 2 Christians who were killed in an Israeli strike on Gaza's only Catholic church on Thursday. The Christian Orthodox Palestinians were living at the church together with dozens of others displaced, Christians and Muslims alike. On Friday, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem and the Greek Orthodox Patriarch headed into Gaza in a rare solidarity visit by outsiders to the territory.
The U.S. House of Representatives gave final approval to President Donald Trump's plan to cut billions of dollars intended for public broadcasting and foreign aid. The rescission package that slashes previously approved funding comes as a part of Trump's plan to drastically cut federal spending.
On this vote, the yeas are 216. The nays are 213. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to the adoption of House Resolution 590, the Senate amendment to H.R. 4 is considered as agreed to.
The package would slash just over $1 billion intended for public broadcasting, including funds assigned to the National Public Radio and the Public Broadcasting Service. It will also cut almost $8 billion for foreign aid programs, including many designed to help countries where drought, disease, and political unrest endure.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says his top priority for this election period is to draw Germany out of its recession and to strengthen Europe's defence. Speaking to journalists at the Chancellor's traditional summer briefing, Merz underlined his close relationship with European leaders Macron, Tusk and Starmer, and said he had been working intensively with US partners on tariff policies and the situation with Israel and Gaza. The German leader developed sharp criticism about the EU, which he said is too bureaucratic and slow to solve its citizens' problems. He emphasised that the migration problem needs to be solved. Merz showcased his diplomacy by refusing to badmouth Merkel's 2015 migration policy of Wir schaffen das, and said that Merz's government is on course to correct it. Merz's answers on Friday marked a shift in tone from the previous government as he attempts to strike a balance between socialist and conservative policies within the coalition. Germany is facing an uphill battle to become more productive and more competitive that is likely to define Merz's leadership for the next 3 years. Liv Stroud in Berlin for Euronews.
An area almost the size of Luxembourg has been burnt by wildfires in Europe so far this year. That is 119% above the long-term average for this time of the year. In recent weeks, wildfires have blazed across the continent, forcing tens of thousands of people to flee their homes. The increased number of fires, particularly in February and March, is largely due to dry and warm weather conditions in Western and Central Europe. Experts have warned for a trend of summers getting warmer and hotter for longer due to a rise in greenhouse gas emissions from burning fossil fuels. They are not surprised by this year's extreme weather, as 2023 and 2024 were both record-breaking years for heat in Europe. Countries that were particularly impacted by forest fires this year were Turkey, the United Kingdom, Greece and Romania. And countries such as Portugal, Greece and Spain experienced a huge loss of forests as a result of the fires. Experts are now urging for better forest management, as some wildfires are difficult to extinguish amid dry conditions and strong winds. Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro has been ordered to wear an ankle monitor. The development came as federal police conducted searches at his home and his party's headquarters in the capital, Brasilia. The Brazilian president is currently on trial, accused of leading an alleged attempt to stage a coup to overturn the 2022 election, in which he was defeated by left-wing President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Bolsonaro has described the trial as, quote, a witch hunt, echoing a term used by Trump when he came to his South American allies' defense last week. Trump imposed a 50% import tax on Brazil, directly tying the tariffs to Bolsonaro's trial. The first festival goers have been arriving at Dreamville, Tomorrowland's official campsite. It comes just hours after a fire destroyed the event's main stage on Wednesday evening. Meanwhile, the festival organizers are still seeking solutions on how to move forward. While the campsite has opened up to welcome visitors, whether the festival will go ahead this weekend remains up in the air.
On se demande si on va pas juste venir pour la soirée et repartir. Enfin, s'ils trouvent pas de solution pour sécuriser les lieux, ils pourront pas accueillir autant de personnes.
En fait, on est un peu en attente de savoir qu'est-ce qui va se passer, surtout avec l'endroit principal qui a brûlé. On a un peu peur de savoir comment ils vont faire pour rediriger ces 50 000 personnes qui normalement accueillent.
A team of 32 artists from 10 different countries brought the stage to life over the course of 2 years. Many festival goers are disappointed but hopeful for a spectacular experience regardless.
Ça va, on relativise. On sait qu'ils vont nous faire des choses extraordinaires. On sait qu'ils sont force de détermination et que bon, ça va être magique malgré tout. On est un peu déçus forcément.
No festival goers were on site when the fire broke out, and none of the roughly 1,000 employees were hurt while taking part in preparations for the opening weekend. Meanwhile, an investigation into the cause of the blaze is ongoing.
North Korea has suspended the entry of foreign visitors to its brand new beach resort, only weeks after opening the site to domestic tourists and a small group of Russians. The country's state-run tourism site announced the news without giving an explanation. But analysts suggest Pyongyang may have imposed the suspension after a Russian journalist's article implied that local tourists at the site appear to be organized by authorities rather than genuine holidaymakers. Another possible explanation is linked to difficulties in attracting Russian tourists, given the site's distance and travel costs. Experts believe the ban will be short-lived, given the substantial investment made from North Korea's already strained economy.